In today's world, it doesn't take much to feel shaken. A careless remark, a cold response, someone ignoring your effort, your presence, your value. You tell yourself it shouldn't matter, and yet it does. You replay conversations in your mind. You question what you said wrong. Your confidence rises and falls based on how others treat you. And slowly, often without noticing, you hand your inner stability to people who may not even care. This doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. But here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. Why do other people's words and behavior still have the power to disturb your peace? The Stoics believed that nothing external should be given the authority to break you. Not rejection, not disrespect, not silence. Yet for many of us, that authority has already been surrendered. Not because the world is cruel, and not because people are always unfair, but because self-respect was never built as a solid foundation. It was borrowed from approval, validation, and outcomes beyond our control. This video isn't about feeling good. It isn't about comfort. It's about building a form of self-respect so strong that no one, no matter what they say or do, can break you. It's easy to believe the problem is the world, that people have become colder, more disrespectful, more careless with their words and actions. Sometimes that's true. But Stoicism asks us to look in a direction most people avoid: inward. Because if your sense of worth collapses every time someone withdraws, criticizes, or overlooks you, then the real issue isn't what they did. It's the structure you're standing on. Most people confuse self-respect with confidence. They assume that if they feel strong, then they are strong. But feelings are unstable. They rise with praise. They fall with rejection. The Stoics understood something deeper. Real self-respect isn't an emotion. It's an internal structure. Like a building with weak foundations, you can decorate it with positivity, motivation, and reassurance. It may appear solid for a while, but the first real storm exposes what was never reinforced. This doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you failed. It simply means your sense of worth was built on things never meant to support it. Approval, attention, and outcomes you don't control. The Stoics didn't try to fix the world. They trained the mind. They didn't demand better treatment. They built an inner standard that made external treatment less powerful. When you stop asking the world to be fair, kind, or validating, and start building a foundation that doesn't depend on it, something shifts. You stop reacting. You start standing. And that's where self-respect begins. Principle 1. Self-respect begins with standards, not feelings. Imagine trying to build a house on unstable ground. Some days the soil feels firm. Other days it shifts, cracks, and gives way beneath your feet. No matter how carefully the house is designed, it will never stand for long. This is exactly what happens when self-respect is built on feelings. Feelings are unstable by nature. They rise with praise. They collapse with criticism. They change with stress, lack of sleep, rejection, or comparison. The Stoics never denied emotions, but they refused to let emotions rule. They understood that feelings are reactions, not foundations. From a Stoic perspective, emotions are information, not instruction. If your self-respect depends on how confident you feel in the moment, then it isn't self-respect at all. It's emotional weather, unpredictable and uncontrollable. That's why Stoic self-respect begins with standards. A standard is a decision made in advance. It's a line you refuse to cross regardless of mood, fear, or the desire for approval. Standards answer questions before emotions try to negotiate. How do you allow people to speak to you? What behavior do you tolerate? What do you walk away from, even when walking away feels uncomfortable? Without standards, emotions take control. You tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. You over-explain because you want to be understood. You compromise your values because standing firm feels lonely. This shows up everywhere in modern life. At work, you accept being dismissed or overloaded because pushing back feels risky. In relationships, you lower your expectations to avoid tension. Online, you measure your worth through attention, reactions, and silence. The Stoics would say, this isn't a lack of confidence, it's a lack of structure. Self-respect is built when you calmly decide what behavior you will accept and what you won't, long before emotions enter the situation. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or aggressive. It means becoming clear. A Stoic doesn't wait to feel strong before acting with dignity. He acts with dignity, and strength follows. To apply this principle, start small. Identify one non-negotiable standard, something you commit to honoring regardless of how you feel. Maybe it's refusing disrespectful language. Maybe it's keeping your word to yourself, even when no one is watching. Then practice honoring that standard quietly. No announcements, no explanations. Each time you choose a standard over a feeling, you reinforce your inner structure. Over time, that structure becomes something no emotion and no person can easily shake. That is how Stoic self-respect begins, not with how you feel today, but with what you refuse to compromise every day. Principle 2. Detach your worth from other people's reactions. One of the fastest ways to lose self-respect is to let other people's reactions decide how you see yourself. A compliment lifts you. Silence unsettles you. Criticism stays in your mind far longer than it should. Without realizing it, your inner state starts moving according to signals outside your control. The Stoics warned against this long before social media, performance reviews, or public opinion shaped daily life. They understood that the moment you tie your worth to how others respond, you hand over authority that should have never left you. From a Stoic perspective, other people's reactions are externals. They belong to things you do not control. You can speak with clarity. You can act with integrity. You can show up prepared and disciplined. But you cannot control how others interpret, appreciate, or respond to you. Yet most people build their sense of worth on exactly that. They adjust their behavior to be liked. They hesitate to speak honestly to avoid disapproval. They replay conversations, searching for approval that never came. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. Modern life trains us to measure ourselves through feedback, metrics, and validation. Over time, attention gets mistaken for value. The Stoics offered a different measurement system. They judged actions, not reactions. What mattered wasn't whether you were praised, but whether you acted according to reason and virtue. Not whether people agreed with you, but whether you stayed aligned with your principles. When you detach your worth from reactions, something important happens. You become harder to manipulate. Disrespect no longer demands an emotional response. Silence no longer feels like rejection. Criticism becomes information, not a verdict. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or arrogant. Stoicism doesn't teach you to ignore feedback or withdraw from others. It teaches you to place feedback in its proper role. Useful information is considered. Noise is dismissed. To apply this principle, make a simple shift. Before asking, "How did they react?" ask, "Did I act according to my values?" If the answer is yes, your work is done. If the answer is no, you adjust, not for approval, but for integrity. This is how self-respect stabilizes. When your worth is measured by your standards, not by other people's moods, you stop being pulled in every direction. You may still be noticed. You may still be ignored, but neither outcome defines you. That is a quiet form of freedom the Stoics believed everyone should cultivate. Principle 3. Keep promises to yourself. Self-respect isn't built through words, intentions, or self-talk. It's built through evidence. And the strongest evidence your mind ever sees is whether you do what you said you would do, especially when no one is watching. The Stoics understood this deeply. Every broken promise to yourself weakens your internal authority. Every kept promise quietly reinforces it. When you say you'll act a certain way, change a habit, or uphold a standard and then don't, something subtle happens. You don't just abandon a task, you weaken trust in yourself. Over time, your mind starts treating your own commitments as optional. This is where self-respect erodes. Most people think self-respect comes from achievement or recognition. From a Stoic view, it comes from consistency. It comes from being reliable to yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private reflections not to impress anyone, but to remind himself of the standards he was expected to live by every day. Stoic discipline was never about perfection. It was about follow-through. Modern life makes breaking promises to yourself easy. You set goals with good intentions. You delay them when motivation fades. You justify the delay because no one else is affected. But someone is affected. You. Each time you let yourself slide, You teach your mind that your standards are flexible under pressure. The Stoics would say this isn't a motivation problem, it's a self-command problem. Self-respect grows when your actions consistently match your decisions. This doesn't require dramatic changes. Stoicism warns against them. Grand promises are easy to make and easy to abandon. Small, specific commitments kept daily rebuild internal trust. To apply this principle, reduce the size of your promises. Commit only to what you can execute even on your worst days. A short workout, a difficult conversation not avoided, a boundary upheld once more. Then keep that promise regardless of how you feel. No bargaining, no renegotiation in moments of discomfort. Each time you follow through, your inner voice changes. Doubt loses authority. Excuses grow quieter. You stop needing external validation because you have internal proof. Over time, a shift happens. You begin to respect yourself not because you feel confident, but because you know you're dependable. That kind of self-respect lasts. It doesn't depend on praise. It doesn't collapse under pressure. It's built on a simple truth the Stoics lived by. A person who can command themselves cannot be easily broken by the world. Principle 4. Accept your flaws without lowering your standards. One of the most common misunderstandings about self-respect is believing you must choose between being harsh with yourself or endlessly forgiving. The Stoics rejected both extremes. They didn't believe in self-hatred, but they also refused self-indulgence. Stoic self-respect begins with clear self-awareness. To accept your flaws in the Stoic sense is not to excuse them. It is to see them accurately, without denial, without drama, and without using them as an alibi. Many people lower their standards in the name of acceptance. They tell themselves, "That's just how I am. I'm not built for discipline. I've always been like this." From a Stoic perspective, this isn't acceptance, it's surrender. The Stoics believed character is shaped through repeated choices, not fixed traits. Your weaknesses are not your identity. They are areas under construction. At the same time, Stoicism doesn't demand perfection. It recognizes that progress is uneven, discipline fluctuates, and failure is part of training. But here's the distinction the Stoics never blurred. You can acknowledge where you fall short without negotiating your standards. Lowering standards may ease discomfort in the short term, but it always erodes self-respect in the long run. Modern life encourages this erosion. We soften expectations to avoid effort. We normalize habits that weaken us. We label avoidance as self-care and comfort as healing. The Stoics would say this confuses kindness with indulgence. True self-respect requires the courage to say, "This is my weakness, and it is still my responsibility." In practice, this shows up in simple but uncomfortable moments. You don't abandon your values because you feel tired. You don't excuse poor behavior because you had a difficult day. You don't redefine your standards downward to protect your ego. Instead, you respond with steadiness. You observe the flaw, you accept the setback, and you recommit to the standard. Not angrily, not emotionally, but deliberately. To apply this principle, separate self-assessment from self-judgment. Notice where you fall short without attaching shame. Then ask a Stoic question. What would the person I respect most do next? The answer is rarely dramatic. It's usually a small correction, a return to routine, a refusal to quit simply because progress feels slow. Over time, this approach builds quiet strength. You stop lying to yourself. You stop making excuses, but you also stop tearing yourself down. That balance, clarity without cruelty, is the mark of Stoic self-respect. You are not respected because you are flawless. You are respected because you refuse to lower the standards that shape who you become. Principle 5. Control what you can. Release the rest. Much of what breaks people emotionally has little to do with pain itself. It comes from trying to control what was never theirs to command. Other people's opinions, reactions, decisions, and timing. The Stoics identified this mistake as one of the fastest ways to lose inner stability. They divided life into two categories: what is within your control and what is not. Your thoughts, choices, and actions belong to you. Other people's behavior does not. Yet most emotional suffering comes from crossing that boundary. You try to manage how others perceive you. You replay conversations wishing you had said something differently. You resist outcomes that have already occurred. From a Stoic perspective, this isn't awareness. It's misplaced effort. Self-respect weakens when your energy is spent chasing control where none exists. The Stoics didn't teach passivity. They taught precision. They focused effort where it mattered and withdrew it where it didn't. When you try to control external events, you place your peace at their mercy. When you focus on what you can control, you reclaim authority over yourself. This shift changes how you experience difficulty. Rejection no longer feels like a verdict on your worth. Disrespect becomes a reflection of character, often not yours. Failure turns into feedback instead of self-condemnation. Modern life constantly blurs this distinction. Social platforms reward comparison. Work environments encourage over-identification with outcomes. Relationships tempt you to manage other people's emotions. The Stoics would say this confusion comes at a high cost. You become reactive, anxious, and easily shaken. Self-respect grows when you consciously release responsibility for what was never yours. This doesn't mean indifference or withdrawal from life. It means clarity. To apply this principle, practice a simple Stoic pause. When something disturbs you, ask, "Is this within my control?" If it is, act with discipline and intention. If it isn't, let it go, not emotionally, but mentally. This takes practice. Your mind will resist. It will argue that control equals safety. But over time, something shifts. You stop exhausting yourself over outcomes you can't command. You stop reacting to every external movement. Your energy becomes focused, deliberate, and grounded. And with that focus comes a quiet form of self-respect, because a person who knows exactly where their responsibility ends cannot be easily manipulated, provoked, or broken. That was the Stoic aim, not to control the world, but to remain unshaken within it. Principle 6. Live according to values, not validation. The final foundation of unbreakable self-respect is simple, but difficult to practice. Stop living for validation. Start living by values. Most people don't realize how often their choices are guided by the hope of approval. They soften their opinions to avoid tension. They adjust their behavior to be accepted. They delay difficult actions until they feel supported. Over time, this habit trains you to look outward for permission before acting. The Stoics saw this as a quiet loss of freedom. When your actions depend on validation, your sense of worth becomes conditional. It rises when you're praised and collapses when you're ignored or criticized. Stoicism offers a different axis to live by: values, not validation. A value is a principle you choose to honor regardless of applause, agreement, or outcome. It isn't performative. It's internal. The Stoics believed a life guided by values creates an inner compass that doesn't spin when external opinions shift. This changes how you move through the world. You speak honestly even when it's uncomfortable. You act ethically even when shortcuts are rewarded. You do the right thing even when it costs you popularity, convenience, or praise. Modern culture rarely encourages this. We're trained to optimize for likes, recognition, and external markers of success. We mistake being noticed for being aligned, but alignment is quieter than attention and far more stable. The Stoics judged a life not by how it appeared, but by how it was lived when no one was watching. This is where self-respect solidifies. When your actions consistently reflect your values, you no longer need constant reassurance. You know who you are because you have evidence, repeated, lived evidence. Validation becomes optional, not necessary. To apply this principle, ask a different question before you act. Not, will this be approved, but, is this consistent with the person I choose to be? That question removes confusion. It doesn't guarantee comfort or acceptance, but it guarantees coherence, a sense that your actions and identity are aligned. Over time, this coherence changes how others respond to you. You become harder to sway, harder to pressure, harder to provoke, not because you're cold or detached, but because you're grounded. That is the Stoic form of self-respect. Not loud, not performative, steady. When you live by values rather than validation, your sense of worth stops depending on the crowd, and that's what makes it unbreakable. When self-respect is fully built correctly, the change isn't dramatic. There's no sudden surge of confidence, no emotional high, no moment where the world feels easy. Something quieter happens. You stop being pulled. Situations that once disturbed you still exist. Criticism, rejection, misunderstanding, but they no longer penetrate in the same way. Not because you've become numb, but because there's finally something solid inside you. When self-respect is rooted in standards rather than feelings, your reactions slow down. You no longer rush to defend, explain, or justify yourself. Silence becomes an option, not a weakness. You begin to notice this integration in everyday moments. At work, feedback no longer feels like a personal attack. You evaluate it calmly, extract what's useful, and discard the rest. Your identity remains intact. In relationships, you stop chasing clarity or reassurance. If respect is present, you stay. If it isn't, you create distance, without anger, without drama. This isn't coldness, it's self-trust. When self-respect is fully built, boundaries stop feeling aggressive. They feel natural. You don't argue your limits, you live them. The Stoics believed this state creates a kind of inner gravity. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. People may still test you, but their behavior no longer determines your emotional state. Disrespect doesn't demand retaliation. Silence doesn't feel like rejection. Criticism becomes information, not a threat. Perhaps the most important shift is internal. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" Because your actions have already answered the question. You know where you stand, because you have stood there repeatedly. This does not make life easy. Stoicism never promised ease. What it promised was stability. A person with integrated self-respect isn't immune to pain, but they are no longer destabilized by it. They can feel disappointment without collapsing. They can face loss without losing themselves. This is the point most people miss. Self-respect isn't something you declare. It's something you practice until it becomes part of how you move through the world. Once it's integrated, you don't need to protect it aggressively. It protects you quietly and consistently from the inside out. At a certain point, self-respect stops being something you practice. It becomes something you are. This is the identity shift the Stoics aimed for. Not a change in personality, but a change in orientation. You no longer move through life asking for permission to stand firm. You no longer measure yourself through other people's reactions. You no longer negotiate your worth in moments of pressure. This shift doesn't make you louder, it makes you steadier. A person who cannot be broken isn't someone who never feels pain. It's someone whose core does not collapse under it. You still experience rejection. You still face criticism. You still encounter loss and disappointment. But these events no longer dictate your behavior. Your decisions come from standards, not fear. Your boundaries come from self-respect, not resentment. Your silence comes from clarity, not avoidance. This is what the Stoics meant by inner freedom. Not freedom from hardship, but freedom from being controlled by it. As this identity settles in, something else changes. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop overcorrecting to be liked. You stop chasing reassurance to feel secure. Not because you don't care, but because you care about the right things. You care about integrity. You care about consistency. You care about living in alignment with your values, even when it costs you something. The world responds differently to this kind of person. Some will respect it. Some will resist it. Some will try to provoke a reaction that no longer comes. But none of that alters who you are. This is the strength Stoicism cultivates. Quiet, grounded, unaffected by noise. You don't become unbreakable by hardening yourself against life. You become unbreakable by building a self that doesn't depend on external approval to stand upright. Once this identity is formed, you no longer need to defend it. You simply live from it. Calm in conflict, clear in chaos, stable in uncertainty. That is the Stoic ideal. Not dominance over others, but mastery over yourself. In a world that constantly tries to pull you apart, that mastery is what makes you truly unbreakable. Stoicism was never about escaping the world or becoming cold toward it. It was about learning how to stand firmly within it. Self-respect, as the Stoics understood it, isn't something you demand from others. It's something you build through standards, discipline, and consistency, day by day, choice by choice. When your sense of worth is rooted in character rather than validation, the world loses its power to shake you. Disrespect no longer defines you. Rejection no longer destabilizes you. Silence no longer feels like a verdict. This doesn't mean life becomes easier. It means you become steadier. You stop reacting to everything. You stop explaining yourself to those who don't listen. You stop outsourcing your worth to forces you can't control. The Stoics believed true strength is quiet, internal, and earned. Once that strength is built, no one can take it from you. Not through words, not through behavior, not through circumstances, because what stands on self-respect does not break easily, it endures.